I will take roll call. Chair Cuevas.
Present.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Lomelli will not be in attendance tonight. Commissioner Medina.
Present.
Commissioner Morales.
Present.
Commissioner Valdez.
Present.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If I can ask everyone to please rise and face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is corrections to the agenda. Are there any?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. There are no corrections to the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. The next item is public comments. If someone can please read that.
Will do. At this time, the general public may address the Planning Commission on any items listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting, including items that are not listed on the agenda but are within the Planning Commission's subject matter jurisdiction. State law prohibits the Planning Commission from acting or entertaining extended discussion on a topic not listed on tonight's agenda. Please be aware that the maximum time allotted for members of the public to speak shall not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please show courtesy to others and direct all comments to the Commission Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is staff communications.
There are no staff communications tonight.
All right, we're moving through this quickly. Next item is public hearing, item number 1.
Yes, Mr. Chair. If I could get the presentation up. So item 1 relates to the adoption of resolution number 0224. And this would recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance to amend Chapter 1737, which is for heavy trucking uses, and Chapter 1749, the Brownfield Overlay District of the Montebello Municipal Code. This amendment would resolve discrepancies in the Montebello Municipal Code related to heavy trucking uses in the 55-acre brownfield area and concisely clarify the conditions and requirements for zoning compliance in such uses. And this would be to basically maintain the status quo of what exists today. It is important to note that nothing in these in the proposed amendments would be associated with new development, and that this request and the amendment would permanently allow these uses to continue to operate within the subject area. Therefore, this action is considered categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15301, existing facilities, and Section 15061B3, the common sense exemption. Thank you. Let's see here. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but basically it provides the background. So the City Council approved amendment number 3-89 in September of 1989, which prohibited the establishment of new trucking uses. And this would include truck terminals, truck transfer yards, truck storage yards, as well as catering trucks in the M1 and M2 zone. Subsequently, the City Council adopted ordinance number 2307, which established the brownfield. I think I'll hand it over to the city attorney if you want. Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
Hi, Commission. Okay, so continuing on from the director, on August 22 in 2007, the City Council adopted an ordinance creating the Brownfield Overlay District to kind of answer the need of the city for heavy trucking in the brownfield area, since in 1989 it was prohibited. So this created an overlay zone, which allows the city to have additional requirements or restrictions or allowed uses in that area specifically, besides the underlying zone. So then in 2011, another ordinance, well, I must say that in that ordinance creating the Brownfield District, there was a sunset provision for, I think it was November 2019, that the trucking uses would be abated unless an ordinance was adopted to allow that heavy trucking use to continue. So that part of the code, unfortunately, was never updated to reflect what happened in 2011 when an ordinance was in fact adopted to allow the heavy trucking uses to continue. So by operation of law, that sunset provision would be repealed. That's part of this ordinance to correct that and to allow the heavy trucking to continue in that area as well as throughout the city. And then, so today, our ordinance will correct that, and then as well as the heavy trucking chapters, chapter 17.37, I believe, included an exemption process that was created many, many years ago with different staff, commission, and unfortunately also that kind of got lost in the mix. So our ordinance today, the recommended ordinance is to clear up that language as well, to provide clarification to those trucking operators of what the requirements actually are, because speaking with them and staff at community meetings and otherwise, they've informed us that it's been confusing to comply with the requirements because of all of these changes that were made and not followed through with, or changes that were never made. So this is the purpose of that. And I also wanted to add that in addition to the draft ordinance, there are 3 minor changes that we're adding today into the recommendation, it's nothing substantive, it's just to clarify that the requirements under the brownfield area, as well as new trucking throughout the city and existing trucking throughout the city, requirements, if they conflict with anything outside of their own chapters, they will supersede those other requirements. So we're going to add language to clarify that. It's nothing substantive, it's more clerical. And also to clarify that any deviation request from an operator would be under the discretion of the Planning and Community Development Director. Thank you.
So it would be appropriate to open the public hearing.
So that concludes the.
That concludes the staff report, and we would now take public comment.
All right, we'll
you.
open up the public hearing process of this presentation and allow members of the public to come forward and speak in support first, and then we'll go with the opposition.
We do have 2 speaker cards. I'd like to invite Bobby Nasir to the podium.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bobby Nasir. Represent properties beginning with 1625 South Bluff Road in the Brownsfield area. My family has been property owners and in the area running a business for approximately 40 years now. So a little bit of a background also what had happened, because we were here in that 2011, it was the redevelopment agency at the city that was running that ordinance, and the state took away the redevelopment agency in 2011. So some of the things got kind of lost in the mix and were never really addressed until this sunset clause came up, even though it didn't really apply. So we probably spent about the past 5 or 6 months working with Director Palumbi and Enver to update and clarify, because there's lots of contradicting items and items that also have made a lot of the property owners down in the Brownfield overlay zone not very secure as far as their uses on their property in perpetuity. So I just wanted to speak in support of this. They've been great helping us out and getting there, and we're almost there. In fact, I did speak with the director and Enver today. There are a couple minor things just on some environmental provisions and some stacking, very clerical, simple things that we can work out between here and commission if this does pass. Otherwise, I just wanted to express my support for it and hope the commission supports it along to clarify this and put this to bed so that we don't have to address this every 5 or 10 years, and the existing uses that are very important to the city of Montebello can exist in perpetuity in a safe and sound manner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Yes, please go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, just to confirm, we did receive a comment letter today, which has been provided to the commission via email, and then you also have a hard copy in front of you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker.
I'd
what's-
like to invite Matt to the podium.
Hi, good evening. My name's Matt Wickersham. I'm an attorney representing A1 Property Development, which is a owner of a property that has a trucking business at 1501 Chapin Road within the Brownfield Overlay District. Want to say we appreciate the efforts by city staff and the city attorney's office to update these trucking ordinances and correct these inconsistencies. We did submit a comment letter today about some additional issues that we thought may be helpful to resolve and to avoid any ambiguities. But in talking with the city attorney further today, I believe that we'll be able to work out those issues. I believe some of the issues were as mentioned at the end of the presentation. So we fully support recommending this ordinance to go forward, and we believe that anything will be resolved before the adoption by the city council.
Great, thank you
you.
for your comments. We have no more speaker cards, so we'll move back to the general members in the audience if somebody wants to come up and speak. If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners, first, any comments or questions for staff? And
I have a question, so I just want to confirm that the inconsistencies were rectified.
Yes, the changes that I mentioned at the end that were in addition to the ordinance provided today were a result of my conversation with Mr. Wickersham. So those will be inserted into the ordinance that's going to be submitted to the council if it's approved by the commission today.
Thank you.
great, thank you.
And in addition, if I may, we did get a request to look at the stacking provisions, which I had a discussion with Mr. Nasir, who is here in the audience, and it's something I think that we can work out, as well as the language, which is just it's a clerical amendment to the purposing section. Just, I think it's removing the phase 2 reference. So those two things as well.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No?
No, I agree with Commissioner Palumbi, yes.
Great, thank you. No, no more? Okay, can we entertain a motion?
I want to go ahead and motion to adopt resolution number 02-24, which is adopting the ordinance amending chapter 17.31 regarding heavy truck uses and chapter 17.49 brownfield overlay district of the Montebello Municipal Code to clarify, simplify, and specify the conditions and requirements of the zoning compliance of heavy trucking operators in the city of Montebello and the brownfield overlay district as specified.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I motion second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Can we get the roll call, please?
I will take roll call. Chair Cuevas,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Medina,
Aye.
Commissioner Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdez.
Aye.
Item 1 is approved.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 2.
Commissioners, item number 2 on tonight's agenda is approval of a resolution number 0124, recommending that the City Council certify the final environmental impact report and adopt findings of fact, statement of overriding considerations, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and approval of the 2040 general plan update and downtown Montebello specific plan and zone change, as well as the bicycle master plan. And just to provide a little bit of background before we do have a couple presentations, but I will be quick. General plans are typically intended to serve as visioning documents for local jurisdictions, and typically they last 10 to 20 years. Although, a general plan could be looked at through the lens of a time capsule, as it also, it basically memorializes the rich history and legacy of a city. I'm confident that in 1973, the current general plan was probably appropriate for the city of Montebello. However, as Montebello progressed over the last 51 years, so does its vision and need to plan for a healthy and prosperous growth as we look forward, including such things as environmental justice and economic prosperity, which this general plan update does address. So we believe that the 2040 general plan, the draft bicycle master plan, and the downtown Montebello specific plan before you tonight will move Montebello forward into the future for the next 10 to 20 years. And just for the record, we intentionally added 2040 to the title so that we are all reminded, or whoever comes after us, that in 2040 it's time for another update. So without further ado, I would just like to first thank the team because without the team, there's nothing. And it really took a lot of 3.5 years of work. As you see in the staff report, we've documented 31 public meetings. That doesn't include our surveys and just a lot of the one-on-one public outreach that we've done. We did 2 community workshops on Thursday. And really, we wanted this to be a community-driven effort, and I believe we've accomplished that. Again, it was in 2020, fall of 2020, when we were approaching a pandemic. It was really unknown, but we still managed to have a robust community outreach effort and really engage our community in a way that I think you'll see as we move forward with the presentation that's meaningful. So thanks again to our entire team, and I would just like to introduce Kaiser Ringwala from Ringwala & Associates to give the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Palombi, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. It was only a short time ago that I was here making a presentation to you, but I want to piggyback on Director Palombi's chain of events, because I think it's wonderful to reflect back to where we were 3.5 years ago. You had a plan, general plan that was 50 years old. You had the state breathing down your throats, saying you have a housing element that's not in compliance. And here you are 3.5 years later, with a general plan that is probably the envy of the region, because a lot of, as we reflect back on current trends, we know there's an existential crisis in terms of climate change. There is a public health crisis, there is a housing crisis, and many cities face a fiscal challenge on how to keep the lights on. And the general plan is one document that gives you the ability to address all of those items, including the housing element. So it is really kudos to your leadership, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, and the city's leadership, the planning department, to have not only a general plan, but an adopted housing element plan. You were the second city in Los Angeles County to get that adopted. And that's, again, kudos to your leadership. I want to quickly walk you through these slides that you have seen several times now. We're working at 2 scales, as Director Palombi mentioned. We're working at the citywide scale, which is to address the general plan, and we're taking a general look at all aspects related to city planning, and then taking a closer and more specific look at the downtown area, and that's where we have a specific plan. And the second map that you see on the right-hand side is the boundaries of that specific plan area in the downtown area. Now, the timing, as we've discussed, a 3.5-year process, working through over 30 meetings. These are 30 formal meetings. Director Palombi will attest to various informal meetings that we've had beyond and above those formal meetings that have brought us to this point. Beauty of a general plan is it's an integrated approach. If you want to take a moment and just think about what that means. Why is that an important thing? Why is general plan an integrated approach? And why is it important as you think about implementation? Because it's all connected. All of these issues are connected. So for example, if you are widening or making downtown a walking experience a better experience, you're not only helping the businesses, you're not only helping the seniors, the social capital, increase the social capital of the area, you're helping the businesses, the economic development, you're helping public health because people can walk, you're improving the traffic because you're allowing people another mobility option. So there are various things that you can address because it's an integrated approach. So you make one change here and you get many, many, many benefits. That's the beauty of a general plan because all of these things are connected. You can take a look at these issues and then prioritizing what are the low-hanging fruits where we get the maximum amount of benefits, and we can target those. Now, the reason I'm spending a little bit of time here at this slide and talking to you about this is because you are the Planning Commission, and the role of the Planning Commission in the coming years is slowly transitioning in the state of California from being a reactive body where you get applications come in and you react to them, to actually becoming a planning body that becomes the keepers of this document, this very important document, the general plan. So it's with that intent, because this is going to be your document. You'll be implementing this. You'll be updating it. 2040 is the overall update, but I would imagine that every year you should take a look at how your general plan is performing. What are some of the strategies? What are some of the actions that have been taken in the past year? What adjustments we need to make to keep it current? Because that's going to be your key role as you move forward. Some of the reactive capacity of responding to development applications is going to shift over to a more administrative function where planning staff will be reviewing those, and only the bigger cases will get funneled through the Planning Commission, City Council. So this is a vision-based exercise in that we worked with the community, within the community. These are images of various activities that took place over the last 3 years, including a visioning charrette that took place in the community. We were here, we moved our shops here in Montebello for 4 days. We were working here 4 days with the community through iterative process, coming up with a community-supported vision. Now, I recognize this, that's much better. I recognize this is a small slide, but I wanted to just suggest some of the images, some of the thought process that went behind the visioning. As we saw the study, we looked at certain areas that were stable, the residential areas up north, the single-family subdivisions, and the industrial areas that you were just talking about a little while back. These are not going to go away. There are businesses that have been here for 40 years. And they will likely to continue to operate in Montebello. So those are stable, but there's a core within the city that offers a lot of potential for redevelopment, for growth, and also for preservation, because there's some areas that are pretty neat, and you want to make sure that they're preserved and protected against inappropriate or incontextual development. And then we took a look at that area, that core area within the city that is colored in orange on the diagram to the left. And we took a closer look, and we really honed in. We realized that the greatest capacity for reinvestment is in the corridors, in the downtown areas, in the corridors, and along the freeway parcels. Of course, in the corridor, Washington Boulevard, with the anticipated transit arrival, presents the greatest opportunities within the city. And then the middle diagram looks at greenway system, and I'll talk about this a little bit, but quickly here is how we can connect all of the existing assets with the future assets that you're going to build in a non-vehicular manner. At the same time, achieving multiple objectives, which is economic development, public health, environmental protection, stormwater retention, variety of goals that you have, and doing that with the green infrastructure rather than what we currently do, which is we take rainwater and put in the pipes and move it downstream as fast as possible. So this is the vision, the diagram from the vision, looking at the corridors downtown and the Washington corridor and the parcels to the north. And the larger diagram just shows what that built out could be. Now, this is not a 20-year built out. This is not looking at 2040, but perhaps looking at maybe year 3000. And then working in increments of 20 years. So we build with the end in mind, saying what's that end result that we want, and we incrementally in 20-year increments build towards that final goal. So this is the green infrastructure. Comment came out at one of the public hearings. Somebody mentioned that the city was known as City of Flowers. This is where you had a lot of nurseries. Wouldn't we need to have something that harkens back within our city to that historical anecdote? And we talked about street trees, and street trees could become that identifier of neighborhoods, of corridors. So specific street trees, specific type of street trees could add character and provide identity to a corridor or to a neighborhood. Now, what specific trees, where, these details will be worked out at the implementation level. And then on the right, you see one of the untapped potentials that you have in the city, which is the Rio Hondo channel, and connecting the downtown to the Rio Hondo, and connecting various neighborhoods, because it is the regional corridor. It's the north-south connector that connects various neighborhoods in the city, not only to itself, but also to the region as a large, because it's part of the diamond necklace, which is the regional network that connects various regional assets to Montebello. So here are some numbers in terms of growth that is anticipated in the next 20 years. We're looking at adding 16,000 units with 369,000 square feet and 104 hotel rooms in the city. This is the general plan land use map. This is a plan that will guide future redevelopment, future reinvestment. The key difference is that it's not specifically looking at land uses, but it's looking at districts. Districts such as the open space, districts such as neighborhoods, districts such as industrial areas or downtown areas, as opposed to subdivisions, office park, commercial shopping center. So we're looking at creating place types rather than individual subdivisions or office parks or commercial shopping centers. This is part of the downtown specific plan. The boundary is highlighted in the light shading that you see. But as we saw the downtown, as the community saw the downtown, it's really anchored by two assets. One of the assets is, as you well know, to the west is the Montebello City Park, which has a variety of facilities that are functioning and are programmed in just an awesome manner. When there are functions, it's filled with people. And to the east is one of the untapped assets, which is the largest open space that you have in the city that is currently has very limited access. And how do you connect the downtown to the Rio Hondo channel? So you have this asset that we need to connect to. And then in the middle, in the core, we heard a lot of comments about how can it be more pedestrian friendly? Can it be safe environment where people can walk around? Can it be a place where we can hang or where we can put a Christmas tree? They wanted to be a place where people can sit, where people can enjoy each other. So there's a new public space that has been called out at the termination of 7th Street and Whittier on the north side. Now the shape configuration will really depend on how the redevelopment of those parcels happen. But the concept nevertheless is there that there needs to be something special happening in the middle, close to Montebello Boulevard in the downtown area. This is a view that looks at how corridors could gain that identity just by simply adding street trees. Somebody mentioned that street trees is about 75% of urban design. You get the street trees right, you're right there in creating that wonderful canopy, wonderful identity, wonderful place. By the way, you're also improving your air quality because you're creating a microclimate under those trees and addressing urban heat. So there are various benefits that you can get with street trees. This is the open space that I was just talking about, right off Montebello, where the Bank of America parking lot and the city's parking lot is north of Whittier. A plaza that could be multi-purpose. You could close Whittier Boulevard on events, Cyclavie or farmers market or arts events, and have a variety of programs, in that space. You're looking at that connection between the downtown and the Rio Hondo. And there's the development that was just, I think, entitled by the Planning Commission and the City Council just north of Whittier that has some open space. This is one of the concepts that looks at how some of these developments can open up their front door and perhaps even open up public access to provide those connections between the downtown and the Rio Hondo Channel. And it doesn't have to be a small pathway or a series of steps. It could be a really celebrated environment. It could be a sculpture park that actually connects the downtown in a very meaningful and attractive and comfortable environment to the Rio Hondo and safe environment, just to add. The downtown specific plan is different than the general plan because, as you know, the specific plans have a code. In this case, there's a form-based code that is part of the specific plan. And the difference in a form-based code is it focuses on public realm, the design of the public realm, which is the streets, the open spaces, and the private facades, the public facades of private buildings, the area where we all interact with each other, which is in the public realm, not so much in the private realm. Only if you have business in the building do you go into the building. So it's looking at the design of the public realm. The focus is on the public realm. It does regulate land uses, but regulates it in a much more broader manner, allowing the market to dictate what kind of land uses can go. It offers a streamlined review process so that the standards are incredibly high in terms of architecture, urban design, and landscape design. But the process is saying if you are willing to abide by these standards, then the process is administrative approval. You work with staff, and we're recommending a town architect work with staff and streamline the development review process. This is Washington Boulevard, taking a look, again, our artist rendering. As I mentioned earlier, it's greatest potential that you have on the south side of the city because more so than perhaps some of the parcels along Whittier and Beverly, because those parcels are small parcels and you have fractured ownership. In this case, you have some fairly large parcels to do something really neat with the opportunities that will come with the arrival of transit. The general plan also looks at a variety of mobility aspects, and you'll hear from Michael shortly about the bike paths throughout the city. But it looks at opportunities in the downtown, saying downtown's one place where the pedestrian is a king. It's not that we're not allowing the automobile, but the pedestrian feels safe to walk around. So there's an area that's shaded in ochre that's a pedestrian district. The vehicles are still allowed to go through, but it's wider sidewalks, attractive environment, street frontages that invite the pedestrian to walk and to stay and to spend in those areas. And then at the bus stops, you will have a variety of options for mobility, not so that you can address the first mile, last mile connection through either ride sharing or bikes or scooters or micro transit. All of those options will be available in a mobility hub at the bus stops in the downtown area. This is a map that is constantly being amended. In fact, every time we go to council, we pick up a few things that need to be added. And that's a great thing because it talks about the creative assets that you have in the city. And to create a map like this actually showcases what a great and diverse place Montebello is. And not only celebrates that diversity, but also looks to leverage it to attract tourism and economic development within the city. So as you are past 100 years, and I'm looking incorporated October 16, 1920, so you're a little over 100 years, and in the 100 years, this city has presided over a portfolio of $7 billion worth of assets. That's the land value of built projects that you have, the revenue that's generated out $7 billion. What this plan seeks to do is to use fraction of the land. The land that I mentioned was in the corridors in the downtown area, properties along Washington and then along the freeway, and generate 5.7 billion. That's about roughly 87% of your current portfolio, just using a fraction of the land by reinvesting in the corridors and the downtown areas. So I'll stop there and happy to answer questions, or Chair, if you would like, we can move on and do the presentation and the environmental review and come back for the questions.
Thank you. This doesn't conclude your presentation. You're just pausing for questions, right? Is that correct?
Yes, we're pausing for questions for the general plan and the downtown specific plan. We still have two more presentations. The one following this is on the environmental impacts, and then after that, Michael Sahimi will present on the bike lanes.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
you,
your
sir.
presentation. Commissioners, any questions, comments? No? No. No. Thank you, Kaiser. Great presentation. You always make it so exciting. It's I can listen to you all day long.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Greg Martin. I'm with Rincon Consultants. Excuse me. Sorry. And we were working with Kaiser to basically do the environmental review, CEQA, for this proposed project, both the general plan update and the downtown specific plan, and all the other actions that go with it. So actually, can we pull back up the that PowerPoint? Yeah, thank you. So there we go. So basically, at this point in the process, your resolution is for a recommendation to the City Council to certify the final EIR and approve the project as a whole, and whether or not to do that. And so at this point, you have a final EIR, or final environmental impact report, and that is combined with the draft EIR. The final EIR summarizes the draft EIR and the public review process that went with it. And it reproduces in response to comments on environmental issues that were raised by the public and persons and agencies or organizations who reviewed the draft EIR and had comments on it. We did receive a few comments. The final EIR contains specific text revisions and says where in the draft EIR those were made, but also shows them, those revisions. They were made in response to public comments on the draft EIR and a few other minor clarifications or corrections, things like typos, et cetera, in revisions to the draft EIR. And the final EIR also includes a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, or an MMRP, which summarizes the mitigation measures that were identified in the draft EIR and the final EIR, and how they shall be implemented and monitored. It should be implemented and monitored. The CEQA requires the lead agency, the city, to evaluate comments public comments on the draft EIR and to prepare written responses to those comments, and that's part of what is being done in the final EIR. So, let's see. Hopefully this gets me on the next slide. Yes. So I'll quickly run through some of the environmental impacts that were identified in the draft and final EIRs. And really, these are a function of, for the most part, the growth that is identified in the proposed general plan update and the downtown specific plan, and really are in general a function of any growth that would happen in the future. But we did look at the specific areas and types and amount of growth that are proposed under this project. So these impacts include impacts or potential impacts to air quality from long-term operational emissions, operational meaning from stationary or mobile, new development, emissions on site, vehicular emissions, that's another big source, of course. And then also construction emissions, and those would be temporary, but can also be significant. Sorry, I should have said, these significant and unavoidable impacts were identified by the EIR of the proposed project. And so that has included the long-term operational emissions, construction emissions that may exceed air district thresholds, or regional thresholds, and then also long-term localized emissions from operation of development that would be that could occur under the proposed project. And then also significant and unavoidable impact to potential one to historical resources was identified. And again, this is a potential impact. We don't, this project doesn't include, is not a specific development proposal where we can say, yes, there's this specific historical resource, but it's a potential impact. And the potential is there for if there's redevelopment or new development and a historical resource would be impacted, we can't guarantee that it could be mitigated, that impact could be mitigated to a less than significant level. And then lastly, temporary construction related noise. Again, that could be significant and unavoidable because we do include, city already has standards, noise standards, of course, and a noise ordinance. And there is also a mitigation measure in the EIR for measures to reduce construction noise, but we can't guarantee that that would always be reduced to a less than significant level for all future projects, and the impacts are to be reduced to all sensitive receptors for all future construction projects. So that's a significant and unavoidable impact. And then in the area of significant mitigable impacts, these are impacts where we could identify mitigation measures that we can conclude would reduce these potential impacts to a less than significant level under CEQA, according to the significance thresholds that are laid out in CEQA. These include potential impacts to biological resources from construction of projects carried out in the future, potential impacts to archaeological resources. This, like the impacts to historical resources, falls under that cultural resources section of the EIR, but this, the impacts to potential to archaeological resources, we concluded that those are mitigable and could be reduced to a less than significant level in the future with this mitigation that was identified. And then under noise, noise, you're required to actually look at noise and vibration impacts. And so under that vibration impacts heading, we did identify mitigation measures that we concluded could reduce those impacts to a less than significant level. And then also for tribal cultural resources, we identified mitigation in that area too that we concluded could reduce that impact to a less than significant level. And then I won't read through all these, but in all other environmental impact areas as required to be analyzed under CEQA, we found that effects would not be significant. It would be less than significant or no impact from this proposed project. And also, under SEQA, we're required to look at project alternatives. And we looked at two potential alternatives, no project alternative, which is a little different for a plan like these plans. No project in this case meaning no new general plan, basically maintaining the status quo of the current general plan and no new downtown specific plan. And then alternative two was the reduced growth alternative. And actually we based the amount, we assumed a reduced amount of growth, and that was based on a low range projections in the market study that was done for the general plan update and the downtown specific plan. But in general, the reduced amount of development that may reduce or could reduce some impacts, but also would not meet the project objectives to as great a degree as the proposed project. And both alternatives would not completely avoid any of the significant but unavoidable impacts. In some cases, those alternatives might reduce it. Specifically, the reduced gross alternative might reduce some of those impacts, but we can't guarantee to a less than significant level. And both alternatives would meet some, but not all of the project objectives, at least not as well as the proposed project. And if you have questions about the alternatives or the alternatives analysis, I can go into that a little bit more if you like. And there were various opportunities for public comments on the CEQA process and the environmental impact report. There was a notice of preparation and a public review period for that. I mean, notice of preparation meaning notice of preparation of the EIR. And that was a while ago now, back in late May through July 13th of 2023, last year, to let people know that we were preparing an environmental impact report for this project, and they could give us comments on what we should be looking at in that EIR. We had a scoping meeting during that public review period here at City Hall on June 13th of last year for the same purpose, but to give people an opportunity to come and ask questions and make comments in person. There was a Planning Commission City Council study session on November 13th of last year, at which time they had an opportunity to comment on the draft EIR at that point, when it was about done. And the draft EIR public comment period, when the draft EIR was released to the public and they could review it and submit comments on it, was December 4th of last year through January 17th of this year. And then tonight is the Planning Commission hearing, your opportunity to ask questions, make comments, both on the project itself and the EIR or the CEQA process. And then City Council hearing is scheduled for April 10th. So, and the city did receive 5 comment letters on the draft EIR. Those were all from agencies or organizations. And key issues raised by the commenters included the potential for hazardous materials sites to be encountered during future development carried out under the general plan update. And there was also a comment letter from a state agency about active, idle, or abandoned oil wells and potential, the potential to encounter those during future development. And they wanted that to be acknowledged in the EIR. We had already acknowledged that, but they wanted us some more specifics about it. So that was one of the things we included in the final environmental impact report. But comments, all these comments identified no new environmentally significant impacts, at least significant under CEQA. Okay, and next steps would be, of course, this meeting tonight, and take any questions or comments from you, the Planning Commission. But on at the City Council meeting, tentatively scheduled for April 10th, City Council would review your recommendation about the project itself, meaning general plan update, downtown specific plan, and also consider adoption of the general plan update, downtown specific plan, and also consider certification of the final EIR. And certification meaning saying, yes, this is was done properly, it's an adequate environmental analysis, and we certify that. So I believe, yep, that is it for me. So I'd be happy to take any questions or comments about the CEQA part, our environmental review part of this project.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll allow the commissioners to ask questions if they have any. I have one, but I'll go last. Commissioners, no? Okay, thank you. My question is, the last time I was on the Planning Commission and we approved the Hills project up the street, we had binders of for the environmental impact report available to the public to review. First the impact and then how that each of the impacts were being addressed. Is that going to be available for the public?
I can answer that. Yes, absolutely. We not only have the documents available online on our city website, but we also have hard copies available for the public upon request.
Great, even better. Thank you. That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
You're
for the
welcome.
presentation.
And yeah, that was also part of the public noticing, in the public notices about the EIR, or the draft EIR, that we told the public where they can access it both online and in person.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we have another portion of
The bicycle master plan presentation. So Michael Sahimi from Kittleson and Associates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Michael Sahimi, Senior Planner with Kittleson. As Kaiser mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Bicycle Master Plan. I'm really excited to kind of show the results of our work this past year and hopefully to build a better environment for everyone who wants to bike. So we're going to go over briefly what is a Bicycle Master Plan, a bit of the process, and then we'll go over what the plan includes, which kind of shows what we did throughout the process as well as what the final deliverables are to help the city improve biking throughout the city. So just briefly, what is a bicycle master plan? In my mind, there's three components to a bicycle master plan. First of all, it's a guiding document to help the city understand where they can put their resources to help people safely get to where they want to go. It's also a plan to help develop a network that's low stress and for all ages and abilities. And that part's key. We don't want a bicycle network that really only caters to the really confident people, fit adults who bike Sunday mornings. It should be a network that helps kids bike to school, helps parents bike with their kids to the Rio Hondo Trail, to the library. So that's why that phrase is there, all ages and all abilities. And finally, it's there to help set the city up for success in terms of grants and funding. As we know, construction gets more and more expensive every year. Resources are always being used for many different endeavors. So, but there is a lot of money out there in terms of state and regional funding. So a lot of times the key first step is making sure that the city does have a bicycle master plan. So when Caltrans releases their ATP grants, we can point and say this plan is, this project's in our plan, which is one of the key first items on those checklists for grant funding. So there's a few different improvements that could go into bicycle master plan we have up on the screen. In terms of physical improvements, the first one are bike paths such as the Rio Hondo Trail. These are the ones that basically take people completely away from vehicle traffic. They're near channels, near creeks, near even railroad tracks, and they provide a completely separated way for people to walk and bike. We can also have bike lanes. As you can see on the screen, these typically consist of a striped lane directly next to vehicle traffic. You tend to see these on, major roadways, collector roadways. There's also a subcategory of these called buffered bike lanes. You see these on Montebello Boulevard north of Lincoln. They're basically a bike lane, but they do provide a little bit more of a horizontal separation from cars. So bikes do have a little bit more separation, which is helpful, especially when you're going up and down hills. There's another tier of these improvements called separated or protected bike lanes. These are the ones where you may have seen them starting to pop up in Orange County and in Los Angeles County, where there's actually a physical separation for bikes on the roadway. They could be planters, they can be bollards, they can even be parked cars, but these kind of provide the highest level of separation for bikes that do want to bike on a major roadway, but they do want to have a little bit more separation. And finally, the last type of bicycle improvement in terms of physical improvements are bike routes and bike boulevards. You tend to see these more on those local two-lane roads, residential streets where the car does share the lane with the bike, but volumes are lower, speeds are lower, and there's treatments so that cars and bikes are able to share the lane. You see these on roads such as Victoria, Madison, Maple, where they are kind of those lower stress, lower volume roads. But bike plans don't just have bike lanes. We cover information such as intersection crossing treatments. For example, the worst thing is when you're biking towards the intersection and also the bike lane drops and you're suddenly in a right turn lane. Kids, parents, people, that it really isn't conducive to make sure that they can do their full trip. So other improvements could be intersection improvements, as well as bike parking and bike wayfinding. We heard from folks, they want to bike to shopping locations, but they want to make sure their bikes are safe. Again, you don't want to come out and find out that your bike that you kind of locked to a tree or to a parking meter isn't there anymore. So making sure that people can bike to their destinations, but they feel comfortable actually leaving their bike there and completing their trip. And a bike master plan also includes programs and policies. It's not just putting bike lanes in a street, it's helping people understand, okay, how do we bike? What's safe biking? Letting drivers know, how do you interact with bikers when you start seeing more and more of them on the street? So this infographic kind of highlights the bike plan process. The city was really lucky. Generally, these projects take 18 to 24 months, but with the general plan and the downtown plan ongoing, we're able to kind of tier off the work being done for that and complete this project from spring up until now. So I apologize, there's a bit of text on the screen, but I did want to highlight the project vision we developed. And we developed this in conjunction with our outreach to make sure that the recommendations in the plan are really serving what the city is hoping to achieve. So just to summarize, the vision for the plan is the city increasing biking by being a place where people of all ages and abilities can conveniently bike to local and regional destinations. The city will provide safe and accessible bike facilities and supporting amenities to create a more welcoming and encouraging environment for bicyclists, cultivating a culture of biking as part of the city's identity. And that last bit, a culture of biking, came up a lot during the outreach. People didn't want to seem like they were different from other people using the road. They want to be part of the city's fabric. So as you can see on the maps on the screen, we took a look at what actually is out there for biking, and you can say there's some room for improvement, room for opportunity. There are currently bike lanes on Montebello Boulevard in the northern part of the city, as well as a portion of Avenida de la Merced. And also there is the Rio Hondo Trail, which is a really valuable asset for the city. So there's quite a bit we can work with. We also looked at what destinations people want to bike to. That includes parks and recreation, schools, bus stops, existing rail stations, as well as a future rail station for the metro line, as well as community assets such as the Rio Hondo Trail and community centers. We also looked at what physical barriers there are to biking to really understand where we would put our improvements and what type of improvements. I'm not going to go over the whole list, but to summarize, there are things such as physical barriers, the freeways, railroad tracks, those always create a barrier for people on bikes. And there's also generally a lack of bicycle-oriented facilities. And also to the north of the city, especially the more you go towards SR 60, the topography does become a little challenging for people on bikes. So that was something we looked at when we were developing those recommendations. So as part of a process, we did a multifaceted engagement program. We did social media and email blasts. You can see one of the flyers we had that we distributed for the first workshop. We also had a booth out at the Downtown Street Fest, really making sure that as we were introducing the project in social media, people can get the flyers, people can sign up for emails, so they were able to participate in workshops. We also talked with stakeholders such as Caltrans and LA Metro. Given the future metro line as well as the freeways around the city, we wanted to make sure that the plan wasn't something that was going to hit a barrier when it came to implementation. For example, if you're putting something along Paramount, hypothetically, it would be good to know what concerns Caltrans has, what they want to incorporate. So when the city is coming to implementing a specific project, we can already kind of know that we are accommodating what needs could arise from Metro, Caltrans, or other agencies. We also had a couple workshops in August and in November. A lot of what we learned really paralleled what we learned through our technical analysis, but people felt that there was speeding and cut-through traffic on some of the more local streets. They felt that, for example, Bluff Road, people used that as a bypass for Greenwood. So just kind of informing what conditions we were hoping to address with the improvements. And they also identified roads such as Wilcox, Lincoln, Beverly, Whittier Boulevard as the roads that they want to use to connect to their key destinations. We also had an interactive bilingual online survey. People were able to give their input on where they want to bike to, what issues they're facing. And on the right, you can see that there's also an online survey, so people can actually drop pins on safety concerns they have, destinations they want to bike to, things for us to consider. So kind of help match our work with what their concerns were. So you see on the screen, this is the overall long-term recommended network in the bike plan. The bike network consists of two different components. The first component is separated and or buffered bike lanes on the major streets. For example, if you're trying to take Greenwood down to the future metro station, making sure that what we recommended on those major streets wasn't just the bare minimum, like a 4-foot bike lane next to multiple lanes of traffic. So just making sure that those streets aren't serving as kind of barriers between neighborhoods. But at the same time, we also looked at kind of lower stress, lower speed connections on those residential streets. So looking at, for example, Madison, Bluff, Montebello south of the railroad tracks. Locations that kind of get people from those major streets to their homes, to schools, to the library, and other destinations. So you can see from the left to the right, the full long-term network does cover a lot more of the city compared to today, especially in the south of Beverly, south of Olympic, where currently people don't really have connectivity via bike. And again, we didn't just look at roadway segments. We also, the plan also does include recommendations at the intersection level. So again, if the city decides to put a bike lane on a specific street, we can make sure that the recommendations also account for how people cross the street at main intersections, so people of all ages and abilities can use the network. We also provided recommendations for parking and for signage. Again, making sure that people that are using the improvements are able to fully utilize it and get comfortably to their destinations. So we have recommendations in terms of how the city can work with private property owners as well as its own city property to put in improvements such as parking so people are able to safely leave their bikes. As part of our network, we also developed a sub-network that was more of a priority network. We recognize that resources are being pulled out by many different needs throughout the city. So it would help to provide that priority network to really focus in, okay, if we're trying to see what we can do in the next 5 and 10 years, kind of what are those projects that really get the most bang for your buck? Kind of what get the most people to the most number of destinations. These next few slides highlight some of the things we included in the plan to help the city in terms of being competitive for grant funding. So as I mentioned, for example, ATP grants under Caltrans, it really helps to have that information available in terms of how many people are going to use it, how much is it going to cost, how many vehicles is it going to take off the road in terms of VMT reductions, what can this project look like? Just going to help the city not start from scratch when it comes to going after these regional and state grant applications. A lot of cities are hoping to improve their bicycle network, so it always helps to have have that initial first step taken care of. So separate from the bicycle facilities, we also provide recommendations for programs and policies. It's not enough to just put in bicycle improvements if the biking culture just isn't there yet. So for example, working with schools to have safe routes to school programs, working with the police department to distribute helmets at events, even the Downtown Street Fest, for example, is a great opportunity. Kind of make sure that these programs are also being paired with projects so that the last thing you want is for people to unsafely use what improvements are being put out there. Just make sure that kind of the programs policies are aligned with the network we're proposing. And finally, tying back to implementation, we also prepared information for the city in terms of federal, state, and regional funding sources, as well as an implementation program in terms of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, just to help kind of focus where resources go so that the city is able to decide, okay, of the 20 bikeways, these are the 5 we're going to focus on for the next 10 years, for example. So that's everything I had. I recognize there was a lot in a very short amount of time, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Michael, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. I'll let the commissioners go first. I do have one quick question, but
Sure.
anybody have any questions?
I
No?
have no questions.
Well, we only received 2 comments
Do you
through.
want to open the public hearing?
Oh. Okay, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing, but question for him first. We only received 2 emails or comments, and both were related to the bike plan and bike lanes. So based on the presentation you just provided us, it seems like you did a pretty thorough community outreach, and you put yourself out there to gather information, feedback, and comments from the public to address some of their concerns. So I appreciate that, and hopefully, it will never satisfy everyone, but hopefully we address some of the major, concerns and requests.
There are a few folks that are very passionate about the subject. They've been at every workshop, they've done the survey, they were at the meetings last week. So it's always good to hear from them. We want, they're on the ground, they see what's happening day to day. So
And
it's great to hear from them.
if I may, just going to the 2 comments that we received that you just alluded to, we did have a chance to look at those. For a majority of the requests, we would coordinate with our Public Works Department because that really is part of the implementation. There's one in particular that requests to amend the municipal code to legalize basically bikes or bicycles on sidewalks. That's something I did have an opportunity to talk to our Director of Public Works, and he said that that's local control. So we could include a recommendation in our bike plan to move forward with that. It would, again, require an amendment of the municipal code, but that is something that we could do locally.
Wait,
So.
bikes are not legal on the sidewalk?
And apparently in our municipal code, they're not. So that's in the comment, but I'm sure he looked at the code, and again, that would be a public works
I knew that
function.
already. But
Oh, you did? Yeah.
I learned that recently.
Did you really?
I didn't get a ticket, but I heard somebody else that I know got a ticket.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so we could bake that as a recommendation into the bike master plan, and then that would allow us to then work with our Public Works Department to move forward. And if the will of the policymakers to do that, we could definitely propose an amendment.
Sounds good. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. It was very thorough, informative.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we have the public hearing open. If anybody in the audience wishes to come up and speak in support or in opposition of anything that was presented today? If not, we can close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for discussions, questions for staff, or consideration for a motion.
I just had a quick comment. Kaiser, in one of our last presentations, you had a slide that showed us where we were and what were the next steps. Maybe you can, I don't know if it's an opportunity for him to speak, but is there any way you can discuss that, or is the meeting in council on the 10th, April 10th, the last step of this process?
I'm only chuckling because, it's never the last step. Actually, it's beginning of the work because the planning is over now and the implementation begins. But you're absolutely right, sir. The city council meeting in April would be the next step. And then following that, we've been working in close concert with staff on a couple of different items. Just to quickly go over those. The specific plan that you have before you is a form-based code, which looks at a spatial review, a review that's slightly different than the typical review where you look at land uses. You're looking at the design of the public realm, the massing and the character and the frontages. So we want to make sure that your staff, not just the planning staff, but also the permit staff, has the training that they need to be able to utilize this new form of coding. In addition to that, we want to make sure we are asking for these things upfront. That here are the standards, here's what's expected, and here are the application forms. So we'll be taking a look at the application forms and making revisions to them to be upfront about the requirements within the downtown area. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is taking a look at the zoning code citywide and to bring the zoning into compliance with the general plan once it's adopted. Because zoning code is one strong way to implement the general plan. And we want to make sure if there are any inconsistencies that exist, you fix that in the downtown, but there are other areas outside the downtown where you still will have the existing code. So we're surgically taking a look at that and identifying areas and opportunities and creating a plan of action that I'm sure as the months come post-adoption, the Planning Commission will be involved as well. So those are some of the few steps that we're working on. Joseph, you want to add to that?
And thank you, Kaiser. As part of the scope, Kaiser will remain part of the team for the next year for the
Yes.
implementation phase of this. But with respect to these plans here, we're at the goal line. We're about to score a touchdown. So we've done a lot of work, and the next step would be to go to the city council, which we anticipate happening on April 10th. For the ordinance, as Kaiser mentioned, on the downtown specific plan, that would in essence be a zone for the downtown, creating a, if you will, a turnkey environment for new development. So that is something that we're excited about. The form-based code, we're also excited to sort of implement that to see what that's like. It's sort of a more user-friendly approach when there's good architects on board, that you can design projects that fit within a building envelope, if you will. So, we're very excited. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Commissioner. To add to Commissioner Medina's question about the final step of the approval of the specific and the general plan, as it starts being implemented and action taken to get more of that work in place, if we come across situations where there is room for improvement or modify whatever's been adopted, that is something that is sort of common in this realm when it comes to these approvals. Would that be a correct assumption?
Is the question if needs to be a modification or amendment?
Right, because final is never final.
Correct.
But
Yeah, these plans are subject to, amendments if needed as we refine processes or, different needs arise. Absolutely, that's something that can happen in the future.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank our city attorney too. They helped us craft the ordinance and the background documents, and that was no easy task.
Absolutely. Well,
Chairman, just to reiterate what Director Palombi just mentioned earlier, we are here with you for a year's time, and we want to make sure that this is tailor-fit for the city of Montebello. There's no such thing as a perfect code or a perfect general plan. It's only when you start test driving it that you feel that, it needs to be tucked in here or tucked in there and changed here. We're there for that. We'll come back in a year's time and work with the Planning Commission as well as the city staff to make those quick edits so that this is just fitting you perfectly.
Well, thank you. Me personally, I want to, thank you, Kaiser, and the rest of the team.
Thank you.
Director Palombi and his staff for working so hard to get us where we're at. thank you. This, as a resident, means a lot to us, and I'm sure that the other commissioners will agree with that. So thank you, everyone, for putting in so much work to get this completed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners? No comments? Everyone's good? Okay, thank you. Okay, think now we closed the public hearing. Oh, it was already closed. Sorry. Okay, so can we entertain a motion to advance this to City Council?
Yes, motion to the resolution number 01-24, recommending city councils to certify an environmental impact report and adopt findings of fact, a statement of overriding considerations, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Approval of the Montebello 2040 General Plan Update, Downtown Montebello Specific Plan, and Zone Change and Montebello Bicycle Master Plan.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion, a second. Can we take roll call?
I will take roll call. Chair Cuevas,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Medina,
Aye.
Commissioner Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdez.
Aye.
Item 2 is approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have Planning Commission orals. Did I skip anything? Did I? No. Yeah. Commissioners, if there's no comments, I think we talked about the modifying the positions of the commissioners for, to kind of line up with the city council. Not sure that we need to exactly meet a deadline or a specific, target date, but we talked about that last time, I think, right? I don't want to be the chair forever, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I want to share the spotlight with
right.
my colleagues here.
Truthfully, if you look historically, the reorg takes place, I believe it's in March and April. As long as I've been here, and I think if we look back at the record, that's the case. So if you're requesting it, we can add the reorg to the next agenda, and then there's a process that we would follow where there would be a nomination and then a selection process among the commissioners, and we can definitely add that to the agenda for the next meeting.
Sure, if
Okay.
my colleagues are okay with that? Yeah, sounds like we're okay. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or orals from commissioners? No? Good? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is adjournment, so this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.